Hello and welcome to another in-session piece. This time around you join me at one of the Colne Valley's most historic lakes, Thorney Weir. Now, I have fished Thorney only a handful of times before, but each and every time I have been here, I've caught from a different swim every time, and each and every carp that I've caught has been very, very special. So the reason why we chose this venue for this particular session, first and foremost, it is a day ticket venue. The fish spawned about 3 to 4 weeks ago, so I'm kind of hoping that they're quite hungry and they're up for a little bit of bait. And not only that as well, it is a place where I know I should do a lot more fishing, and it's somewhere that I have enjoyed, like I say, fishing in the past. Now, I arrived about 6 o'clock this morning, gate opened at 7. There was one other guy on the gate behind me, had a little walk around, and there's about 6 or 7 other guys on there. They're quite well spread over the lake, and Thorney is a lot different to a lot of the other lakes that I fish elsewhere. It's very shallow, it's very weedy, there's open water fishing, there's channels, there's bays. Thorney literally has got absolutely everything. Now, most of the guys that I've spoken to have all had success. So to me, straight away, it is a result. There's fish coming out, and I know that we could be in for a bit of a session. Now, I've had a walk around. As is always the case, the furthest walk peg from the van was available. So I come round into here, had a little look, and lo and behold, a few fish were showing out in front of it. Now, one of the main attractions as well to this peg, not only the fact that you're sort of round on a point and you are left alone, is it commands so much water. Now, with any of my day ticket angling, one of the things that I try to look for as best as I possibly can is having an area of water that nobody else can interfere with throughout the duration of your session, because if I do get a spot going and I get the fish feeding, the last thing I want to be doing is have people encroaching on me. So I've had a little lead around. It is very, very weedy, but there are clear spots. It is a little bit deceptive because it does have this eelgrass type weed in here, which I've not found on a lot of the other lakes that I fish on, and you get a real solid drop for it, but when you pull it back, it sometimes snarls around the lead. But I've had a good few chucks. I am just going to have a couple more just to make sure I'm 100% and I know exactly how wide the spot is. I'm going to get the rods out. Fingers crossed we can get bent in to a Thorney Weir carp or two. So without further ado, I'll have a couple more leads up, and then we're going to get the rods out. I managed to find a really, really nice clear spot, but it is only small. It's no wider than the swim that I'm casting at opposite, so I reckon it's around 6 to 8 feet in width. So I've got a couple of rigs ready. I'm not 100% sure if there isn't little bits of that sparse eelgrass on the bottom. So what I've done is I've just gone for 2 real critically balanced slow sinking hinge stiff rigs. A rig that I wouldn't normally use, but I feel in this situation is definitely going to be a good starting point. And as you can see in my right hand here, I am using modern technology to deliver these 2 hook baits bang on the money. Now, as technology advances in every job, we all want to do stuff that makes our lives that little bit easier. And this is just going to make my life easier, and it's going to get the session started. And what I've done is I've loaded the boat up with a lot of bait. And the reason I've done it with a lot of bait is because, like I say, I'm a little unsure. I'm just going to drop that there because that's bang on the money. Donk. Is because I'm a little unsure exactly how clear the spot is in case there is any of that eelgrass. So what I want to do is I just want to put a lot of bait out in one lump, and then if the fish do come over it, they're going to clear it quite quick. And then what I'll do then is I'll cast and I'll spawn to exactly the same area. So yeah, I'm all for modern technology. So I'm going to bring Cecil the vessel back in, set this rod on the rest, 2 rods out fishing, we're rocking. And just over my shoulder there is the edge of an out of bounds area. So I'm going to have a little lead around out there, find a clear spot, and I'm going to put another rod out there. And we're fishing, and hopefully the first Thorney Weir carp isn't going to be too far away. The The reason why I chose Thorney Weir for this particular session is I follow the lake quite closely all across the social media platforms, and it is always doing really, really nice fish. And not only that as well, loads of big fish. And I know in myself that this is a venue that I should fish a lot more than what I actually do. It's only a couple of hours away from my house. It's an open access day ticket, and like I've just said, there's loads and loads of lovely fishing here. Now the lake itself is around 20 acres in size, and it's quite possibly one of the most picturesque lakes that I've ever fished. It's got bars, it's got snags out in the water, it's tree lined, there's a real long channel when you drive into the lake. The lake has absolutely everything, and aside from that as well, it also has many options to fish out in the open water, the main body of the lake, where I know the fish sit and the fish live, and it just suits everyone's style of fishing, and it suits mine to a degree, but there is also sort of challenges and a few differences when fishing Thorney Weir that I probably wouldn't face fishing a lot of the other day ticket lakes that I do. And aside from the lake being so picturesque, it's also got an incredible stock of carp. A large head of carp as well, I may add, with half a dozen over 40 pounds and a big backup head of 30s as well at the right time of year. So given the time of year that we're in now, they've not long spawned, I think a good outcome for this trip, a realistic target would potentially be a fish over 30 pounds. Now, any bite is going to be a great outcome for the trip. But like I say, it isn't a venue that I fish a lot. I don't know a massive amount of information about the lake, and each and every time that I fished here, which is only about 3 or 4 I believe, I fished in a different peg every time. So going by what I've caught from here before, I think a realistic target, if I could catch a fish over the 30 pound barrier, I'll be driving away from here very, very happy. Well, I've given it a couple of hours here now. Nothing has happened at all. Now, I didn't set a lot of gear up purely and simply because I didn't want to commit to fishing any particular peg, certainly not this early on in the trip. Now, over to my left, so on what I believe is the riverbank side of the lake, is a massive, massive weed bed. Now, all throughout the past couple of hours, we've been seeing the odd fish stick its head out inside that weed. So I'm going to bring these in now, go around there for a couple of hours. It isn't like a lot of the other lakes that I fish Thorney Weir. You have to move around, you have to make sure that you're on the fish. Certainly going into the night, I want to make sure I'm going to put myself in the best possible chance for the morning. So that's why I didn't put a lot of bait out to start with. So I'm going to bring them rods in, move around, flick a couple of light leads and some hinges around just to see if I can nick a bonus bite before settling on somewhere for tonight. Right, so I just barrowed my kit around to the weed bed where I've been seeing all the fish, and yeah, it's quite evident that there is probably more fish in here than what I was seeing over there. But the one issue that I've got is fishing over the back of the weed bed is not safe. Fishing this side of it, the fish aren't really this side of it. There's one channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flick one rod with a light lead and a real slow sinking hinge stiff rig into the channel. I'm not going to have any cast to feel if there's a hard spot or not. I'm just going to flick it out and hopefully it settles over the weed, and if a fish goes over, you never know, there might just be a bonus chance. But I don't want to go leading around because the fish are here and there's a peg around from this where I'm going to potentially be fishing tonight, and I'm hoping that the fish that are in this weed bed, as they come out of it tonight, they're going to pass me there. So I'm just going to flick this one rod out now and we'll see how it goes. But that surprisingly went down all right. I'm certainly happy enough to leave it there. It didn't seem to spook the fish that were around it, so I'm going to lay it on the floor, put a stone on the spool like the old schoolers do, sit back and see if it rips. So whilst my over-ambitious move to fish for the fish that were down in the weed bed hasn't yet paid off, the bailiff has just walked around and told me that the guy in the peg that was opposite where I started, the one that's had a couple of bites, he's off at around 8:30. Now that gives me about 45 minutes to an hour now just to get the rigs and everything ready. So when I go round there, I can get the rods out quite quickly. Now, I've not fished Thorney Weir a lot, like I've already said, so I don't know this particular peg that I'm going into, other than the fact that the guy's caught some fish out of there today, so there must be a few clear spots out there, but I'm not going to ask him where he's fishing. I'm just going to go in there and do what I would normally do, but I want to try and do as much as I possibly can now to save time, so when I move around there, I can get the rods out effectively and quickly. But I am tying here a rig that is very, very fashionable, but a rig that I've probably only cast into the water for a maximum of about 6 hours in my whole entire life, and that is a Ronnie rig. Now usually I'd use a 360 rig, but whenever I fish lakes with really heavy weed, I just don't know what it is, but I've just found that a 360 rig, I have had a couple of hook pulls. Now I don't like losing fish, as I'm sure all of you guys don't like losing fish either, so I'm going for the Ronnie purely and simply because I don't know what's out there on the bottom, but I'm assuming there is going to be a little bit of low-lying weed, so I'm going to tie 2 of these up. But on the 3rd rod, I'm going to tie up an Illusion D rig or a hinge stiff rig, depending on what the bottom's like. I'm going to go around there, I'm going to find 3 spots, or if I can only find 1 spot, I'm going to put 3 rods onto it, and hopefully I can carry on from where he has left off. Now he hasn't had any more bites since about midday, but he did catch this morning, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that I can emulate what he done this morning tomorrow morning. So I'm going to carry on tying my Ronnies, get my baits on it, sit this peg out for another hour, see what happens, and I'm going to move around there just before dark, get the rods out. Job's a good one. Let's see if we can get ourselves a Thorney Weir carp. It's chilly, isn't it? Right, so I just got into the swim, only about half an hour now before it gets dark. Like I said before, I haven't fished in this peg, so I'm just gonna have a few leads around just to try and find somewhere clear, get the rods clipped up, get them out for the night. Again, first cast there is quite a lot of that eelgrass, so it's probably gonna take me a few chucks to find somewhere that I'm happy with, but I know this peg has done fish, so there's definitely gonna be spots out there somewhere. It's just a case of having a little lead around until I find one of them. So after clocking up a good few thousand steps, I've eventually just got 3 rods out for the night in the 3rd swim of the day. The guy that was in here before me, like I said, he did catch a few fish. Now, I didn't ask where he was fishing, but I've had a little lead around. There isn't really anything out there that screams fish here. It's really clear, like I would normally find on the other day ticket lakes that I predominantly fish, but I have found an area that's a little bit smoother than everywhere else. And the reason why I sort of fished or aimed towards that area was because I see a couple of fish there, which can sometimes be the case. And there is quite a big channel of weed off to the right-hand side of where I'm fishing. So it's probably a bit of a patrol route. But anyway, it's nice and clear. I've got 2 Ronnies over it, which again is rigs that I wouldn't normally use, but I feel they give me a better presentation over what sort of low line weed I think's on the spot, as opposed to a 360, which is what I'd normally use. And I have got one hinge out there just in case I've sort of misjudged how deep the weed is. Trundled them out with a boat just because it was getting dark and I wanted to get them out there. And I have loaded up the boat with a fair bit of bait, probably a couple of pints in each hopper both times, just so it clears the area, all 3 out onto the same spot. I've heard a couple of fish show. I need to have myself some dinner. I'm going to chill out and hopefully I can get myself a Thorney Weir carp after clocking up a fair few miles.
That's a bite. That's a bite.
Well, I've just finished my tea and the right hand rod pulled up tight. I got a little drop on the bobbin and it took me a couple of seconds to realise what was going on. And yeah, tight clutch. Bobbin was rammed up against the top and I'm in to a Thorney Weir carp. I'm going to focus on getting this one in because it's very, very weedy out here. And I want to try my best to get this one in the net. And there's also a sunken barge out to the right of the swim. So I want to try and keep them away from that as well. But it is good news that we've moved round into this peg and I've managed to get myself a bite. There's nothing more sort of that screams putting pressure on yourself than when you move in behind somebody that's caught a few fish. But you can only do what you can do. And I don't know if I'm fishing near where the guy was. I never asked him where he was fishing. The spot that I found was clear, but not as clear as what I'd probably fish on other lakes. But at the end of the day, when you're fishing a lake with so much weed in it, the fish are used to it. And they feed in and around it all day long. So in the end, I just sort of bit the bullet and went on the clearest drag that I could find, dropped the 3 rigs out because it was getting dark. And here we are, we're into a fish. So I'm going to focus on getting this one in. And hopefully I can show you the Thorney Weir carp. Nice if this one went in the net, I've got to be honest with you. I'll tell you what, don't look a bad fish, go on, in you go. Yes! Oh, well worth the day of moving around and moving just on dark. What a result. A Thorney Weir carp on a Ronnie rig. And it's a good one. Well, just like if I was casting, I'd get the rod straight back out. I've loaded up Cecil and he is back out on the spot, looking good. Is he in line with where I need to go? Yep. I'm going to drop him down right about there. He's looking... Donk. There we go. Yeah, like I was saying, much like if I was fishing and casting, fish is in the net, rod straight back out onto the spot. And with a bait boat, it does make life 100 times easier. And that's gone out there nice and accurate. So I'm going to bring Cecil back to shore, clip the bobbin on, and we're going to sort that fish out. And it's a good fish, and it seems to be getting a little bit bigger each time I look in the net. £30, 10 ounce. Oh, that'll do, brothers. Look at that. Literally, after God knows how many steps walking around this lake today, I finally settled in the 3rd different swim. Got the rods out just before dark, just finished my tea, right hand rod, ripped off. £30, 10 ounces of Colne Valley Thorney Weir mirror carp. Long, scaly and big, just how we like them. What a start to the trip, and the night is still young. Lovely, lovely times. Mwah. Well, I was just laying in bed and admiring how bright it is tonight, and the middle rod dropped back to the floor, pulled up, and I'm in to another fish. Again on a Ronnie, and this one is on a white pop-up. And the beauty is tonight, is where there's so much light pollution around London, is that you can see clear as day right the way across the lake. And I'd literally just seen 2 fish show, probably about 3 or 4 rod lengths, I suppose it was, behind where I'm fishing. So they're definitely out there. And what is nice as well is that the spot that I found is obviously good enough to get bites from. Now, by a spot, I mean, it's not like it's a major clear spot. It's somewhere, you know, a lot of people talk about spots, and I think a lot of people feel so much pressure to try and find a specific spot. In my opinion, a spot for me is somewhere that I can present a rig with some bait over the top, where I know that if a fish comes over it and it comes into contact with a rig and bait, it can feed freely without the rig getting snarled up. And as this has proved, you can get bites. I'm going to focus on getting this one in because it's shallow and I'm fishing 3 rods quite tight together, so I'm trying to guide it away from the other 2 lines and keep it away from danger. So I'm going to focus on getting this one in, and you never know, I might just have another Thorney Weir carp in there in a minute. Oh, it's another nice looking mirror. There's a nice looking mirror, that one, scaly one, this one. Looks like we're going to have 2 fish successfully in the bag. Yes, another one. Oh, I'm going to put my shoes on because my feet are hurting, but there we go. Another bite, another fish in the net. Come on. Well, here we go then. Bite number 2, carp number 2, albeit about half the size of the first one, but I've had to put the same amount of effort in to catch this one as what I have the other one. Another lovely Thorney Weir carp. They do not come much better than that. Oh, what a great start. Lovely fish, that. And tell your mama. Well, I just released that little mirror, and the only rod that hasn't gone is the left-hand rod, which is on a hinge stiff rig, and I was beginning to have a little bit of a doubt that it was maybe a little bit too high off the bottom, and here I am, bent into a fish on the hinge stiff rig. It is in the weed, so I'm just going to keep a little bit of pressure on it. Hopefully it finds a little bit of strength and kicks itself free. But yeah, on a hinge stiff rig. So I've caught on 2 presentations so far that I don't use a lot, so it's boosted my confidence. Not that I wasn't confident already anyway, but it's always nice to get bites on stuff that you don't use that often, to know that if you do go to venues where you do need these rigs or setups, that when you put them out, you know that how you're tying them and how you're putting them out there and presenting them is the right way and it's working. So I'm going to focus again on trying to get this one in. It's solid in the weed. There is quite a bit of weed out there. And hopefully I can show you another Thorney Weir carp. Well, I've got it round and out of the way of any danger, I think. There's a little bit of a stalemate in the weed, but a bit of steady pressure, and they always kick themselves free eventually. Good fish, that. It's on the old hinge. There we go. It's a nice 20 pounder, that. A lovely fish, look at that. Yes, there we go. I have now had a bite on all 3 rods. 2 on a Ronnie, 1 on a hinge. Another lovely Thorney Weir carp. Whoa, come on, you beauty. Hmm. 24, 10. So I'm kind of running out of things to say. Bite number 3, fish number 3. This one is the first bite on a hinge stiff rig. I was a little bit dubious, I've got to be honest, about putting it out because it is a complete alien rig to what I would normally fish. But I've now had 3 fish, 2 on a Ronnie and 1 on a hinge stiff rig. So to me, that tells me that I'm going to put that down before it kicks off, that the spot is definitely clear enough to get bites from. So hopefully there's another chance or 2 of a bite tonight, and then tomorrow, hopefully it carries on. Lovely, lovely times down here at Thorney Weir. So the rods have remained motionless since I had that 24-pounder last night, but 3 fish on the board on the first night. I'm absolutely buzzing with that. I sort of expected it really. A lot of the lakes I fished before that are sort of this quite like dense in weed, the fish generally tend to shy away from those areas during the hours of darkness, and they don't normally return until a good couple of hours after first light. So I'm going to leave them rods in place. I've redone them obviously after each fish last night, so they are relatively fresh. It is only about 7 o'clock in the morning now, so I'm probably going to give them till about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'm going to bring them in and redo them. So I'm pretty confident that the fish are going to follow a similar pattern to what they did yesterday, which is they spent the morning out in the open water to my left, and then they pushed in to this weed bed as the day progressed. So yeah, I'm going to leave them out for another hour and a half, 2 hours, have a bit of breakfast, bring them in about 9 o'clock, reevaluate the situation and put them back out there and see if we can get ourselves another Thorney Weir carp. There we go, boy. Got a little nibble. But the option to leave them rods out has definitely paid off, as you can see. Oh, that's me, I think. Yeah, as I said, the option of leaving the rods out has paid off because I'm into another fish. I'm a little bit startled because I was actually drifting back off to sleep, and yeah, the right hander just pulled up tight, very, very slow take, and I'm into another fish. And this is around the time yesterday that I think the guy that was in here really started to put a few on the bank. So hopefully the pattern will repeat itself, and I too can manage to put a few on the bank today. But it's not, the weather hasn't done nothing like what it said it was going to do. It's going to go really nice and warm, it said, but it's overcast. It's almost got a bit of a wintry feel to it today. Oh, it's out there on top. It's just breached, as my cameraman Brad would say. It's a bit of a talking point, that word. I've never heard it be used before in a fishing film, but Brad seems to think that it's quite a descriptive word. And this fish is just breached, and it's moved a lot of water. So this is a big breacher, this one. It's either a really dark mirror or it's a common. It's a common, that's why it's fought so hard. I reckon we got the better of this one, provided nothing happens now. Be a nice result to get this one in the net after a bit of a disaster. Yes. Well, not the easiest of fights with the way in which it got caught around the other line, but we've got ourselves, well, I've got myself, should I say, another Thorney Weir carp in the net. This one's a common, and it is as black as you're at. Right, well, that common sat down in the net. Like I said, I had a bit of a disaster. I caught one of my other rods, so I've just whipped that one in, put 2 new fresh hook baits on the 2 rods, obviously the one that I had the fish on and the one that I wiped out. I'm just sending them straight back out. That is the beauty of modern technology, is it doesn't take very long to get the rods back out. As you can hear, modern technology comes with its problems. My batteries are running low, so I'm hoping that this is going to make it out to the spot. But on the plus side, we got the fish in, and whilst we was messing around with that and getting the new hook baits on and loading the boat, one showed not far away from where I'm fishing. So there might be a few more fish out there. Like I say, yesterday, the guy that was in here, his action picked up from around 11 o'clock, which is the sort of time you'd expect the fish to start moving back into the weed. And hopefully they're going to repeat that process today. This one's out to the clip now. What I'll do is I'll get it to the clip, just to the left of the spot, allow for the wind to push it a bit, hold the rod as I would if I was casting, and then release the hopper, and then follow it down as the lead drops through the water. A lot of people think that when you've got a boat, you just have to take it out to the clip, dump it down and let it all fall in a pile. I do still like to feel for for a bit of a drop. So obviously the lead isn't moving, so I haven't got a lot of swing back on the lead. I'm just using the tip of the rod just to lower that lead down onto the spot. You don't really get a great drop because you're obviously only dropping it from a boat and it's only about 5 foot deep, but that one felt all right. It's down there, it's out on the spot where I've caught fish. There's going to be one or two more, I'm sure of it. Yeah, 20. 26, 26.14. Here's a nice one. But look at that one then, 26 pound and 14 ounces of glorious Thorney Weir common carp. It definitely paid to sit on my hands and wait for them to drift back down over the area. And yeah, a slow take on the right hand rod, and this was the result. What a lovely, lovely fish. The rods are back out there. I've seen a couple more fish in the area. Let's hope the rest of the day can carry on, and you never know, we might get one or two more Thorney Weir gems. Lovely fish that. Proper nice common carp. Most of my fishing is done with an Illusion D rig. It's one of the most versatile rigs going, and it suits my style of fishing down to a T. But here on Thorney Weir, I haven't gone in with the Illusion D rig, and the reason why I haven't is because even though I've had a good lead around, it has been almost impossible to find what I believe is a true clear spot where I would be happy to use that rig. So what I've done is I've gone for a Ronnie rig, probably the most fashionable rig in carp fishing, but a rig that I have very, very rarely used. In fact, I think I've only used it on 2 other sessions before I've chucked one out here on Thorney Weir, but it lends itself perfectly to the bottom that I'm fishing over. Now, the bottom that I'm fishing over, certainly in this particular peg, you're getting a smooth pull, but every now and again you are getting a little bit of that straw grass coming in around the lead. So to me, it tells me that the spot isn't 100% perfectly clear. So I do want something that's going to sink nice and slowly and settle over any of that may be lying on the bottom. But the way in which I set this rig up is again slightly different to probably how a lot of people set it up. Now, first things first, as you all know, when I use the Illusion D rigs, I like to use the rig very, very long, 12 to 14 inches, which is exactly what I've done on the boom section of this Ronnie rig. It's 12 inches in length and it is tied with Illusion. Now the reason why it's tied with Illusion is because I have utmost confidence in this material. It is completely inconspicuous to the fish, and even though it is a fluorocarbon, it is relatively supple. So if there is some up and down bits out there where the eelgrass is growing, or there is other little bits of debris on the bottom, it will sit nicely over that as well. So I'm using a nice long boom. And now down to the business end. Now the reason why I favoured the Ronnie over a hinge on this particular occasion is because I just think the hinges, they just sit out a little bit too high, whereas the way in which I set the Ronnie up, I know it's going to be a nice low-lying presentation over the weed that I'm fishing on, and it's always going to be presented. It's spinning, it's moving, and it's always ready for when a fish comes over it. But there is a couple of things that I do probably slightly different to what most people do. Now, a lot of people will tie a pop-up rig, a great big piece of putty or a split shot on the end, and they'll anchor that pop up to the bottom. Now whether I'm fishing with an Illusion D rig or whether I'm fishing with a Ronnie like I am here, I like to have my hook bait as critically balanced as possible. I've recently been involved in some underwater filming, and one of the main things that I picked up from watching it was the movement of the hook bait underwater. The fish very, very quickly suss out a bait that is almost stationary in one area, and by making my hook bait as light as possible, it almost emulates how the free offerings are moving on the bottom. Now the way in which I do this, first things first, you'll see there is absolutely no additional weight. All I have is the swivel and the hook. I'm using a 14mm pop-up. Now this pop-up is over buoyant for this particular rig, but what I do is I take a pair of scissors to the pop-up and I gently shave it down so it sinks very, very slowly. Now, obviously, when you are shaving down a pop-up, yes, they do take on water a little bit quicker, so over the course of time, they will tend to fall over. But with the busier places that I fish, they're more highly stocked. The rig isn't in the water for any longer than say 6 to 8 hours, so that isn't something that I worry about too much. But one thing's for certain, a rig that is critically balanced will without a doubt catch you more fish than a rig that is anchored hard to the bottom. Now you may have seen it a few times before, but just in case you haven't, this is how I tie my Ronnie rig. So when I'm tying my Ronnie rig, I always like to start at the hook end first. So I'm taking a size 5 wide gape long shank hook and a Ronnie sleeve, and I'm passing the point of the hook through the wide end of the Ronnie sleeve and bringing it out on the narrow end and gently passing that round down the shank of the hook until it meets the eye. I then take the Ronnie swivel and hook the hook onto the end of the Ronnie swivel before gently coaxing the sleeve down, meaning that the hook and the Ronnie swivel are held firmly in place. Then I take a micro hook ring swivel and pass it onto the hook on the big eye of the micro hook ring swivel before finishing it off with a micro hook bead. I like to place the hook bead opposite the barb. Not only does this give the hook bait loads of movement up the back of the shank of the hook, but it also exposes the top part of the hook, meaning that you get a good hook hold every single time. Then onto the boom section. All I'm doing is passing the line through the main eye of the Ronnie rig swivel, and I'm tying off a figure of 8 loop knot, and then I'm running my hand down the length of the hook link, setting it to the desired length, and I'm finishing the rig off by placing an anti-tangle sleeve on and tying an additional figure of 8 loop knot at the top of the rig to finish off the boom section. When it comes to attaching the bait, again, being involved in an underwater project recently, it has made me look at how I attach my bait in a completely different light. The aggression in which certain fish attack the bait. In the past, when I've reeled in the morning, I have actually found that by blobbing, I haven't had a bait on the end. So what I like to do now is using a piece of floss or a piece of braid, putting it through the top eye of the ring swivel, putting my hook bait down, and rather than blobbing it, I like to tie it off and put a boilie stop on before I blob it, just for that extra security. So there you go. That is exactly how I tie up the Ronnie rig. A very, very simple rig, without a doubt one of the most fashionable rigs on the market, but it's worked for me here, so why would I not use it anywhere else in the future? A little bit of afternoon action, just sitting there getting a few more rigs tied up, ready for hopefully another repeat of yesterday evening. And the right hand rod, couple of beats, pulled up tight, and I'm in to another fish. This is going way better than what I expected it to go, but again it is going near my other 2 rods, so I'm going to concentrate on trying to steer this one around. Didn't really do a great deal when I picked the rod up. It sort of come towards me quite quickly, but no doubt it's going to kick off Marielle underneath the tip. Very, very clear this water as well. You can see everything. And I had just seen a couple of fish show just behind it as well. So they're definitely in and around that weed. Now, I'm not fishing mega tight to the weed, and 2 reasons really. First and foremost, the main reason why I'm not fishing tight to the weed is because obviously through the hours of darkness, I know they're not going to be in the weed as much as what they are during the day. And also as well, if you're fishing tight up to a weed bed and you're relentlessly casting and you're putting a lot of pressure on the fish up into the bed, you're going to push them further away. And it's one of the things that I see so many people do, especially when they're fishing to like snags. They try to go as tight as they possibly can. Now, the more you cast and the more disturbance you make, the further back you're going to push these fish. Now, I want to use my bait and my baiting application to pull the fish away from the weed. And I'm not having any problems with the fish really burying themselves into the thick weed bed behind where I'm fishing. Come on the top now. Yes! Oh, that'll do. Another one in the net. That is a lovely looking fish, that one. On the old yellow. Loves a yellow pop-up. Watch out, Brad. Double trouble. We're on it now. Pretty much double take that. One in the net and the other one went. That's what we like to see. Proper nice fish this one is. Completely right, completely right. Go on, in we go. Ah, that is a nice fish. Well, they fed together, so they might as well land a net together now. Look at that, that is a nice fish, that one. That's what we came for. Here's the first one. A little over 20 pound, but another stunning Thorney Weir carp. But let me tell you now, the one that is in the net is even more special than this one. A proper, fully scaled. Slip this one back. I'm going to grab that out and I'm going to show you now. It's a proper fish. But look at that, another lovely Thorney Weir carp. 26, 26.14. That'll do. Well, how about that then? A little under 27 pound of Thorney Weir, fully scaled. What an incredible fish. So far, each and every fish that I've had has been so special. And to think that I've only done a little over 18 hours fishing now, who knows what else the rest of the trip has got in store. But if nothing else happens, what a carp that one is. You beauty. It will be no surprise to a lot of you to see what is in this bait tub is what I use a majority of the time that I go carp fishing. I've got hemp, I've got sweet corn, and I've got crushed boilies. But there is a few subtle differences that I've made, certainly on this particular session down here at Thorney Weir, that I wouldn't necessarily do on other venues that I go to. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is the boilies are not washed out. Before any trip, I always wash a certain amount of boilies out, maybe 1 or 2 kilos, just in case I end up using them. But as it happens, it is a lot weedier here on Thorney Weir than I first anticipated, and all the while using mulched up boilies, washed out boilies is very good. The one issue that I feel that I would have here is by mulching up a washed out boilie, they become very heavy. What I want and what I'm trying to achieve with this mix is to make it as light as feasibly possible so it lands on top of the weed. Certainly for the start of the trip anyway, because the last thing that I want to be doing is putting all my bait out, it's sinking down through the weed and the fish having to work really hard to siphon the bait from the weed. I want to make the bait as light as I possibly can so it lies on top of the weed. The fish eat the bait from the top of the weed, and over the course of the session they're going to clear the area off. And you know what, after a couple of bites I'd be more than happy to start introducing some mulched up bait into the mix. And then to finish the mix, I've got hemp and sweet corn with a little dose of manila liquid in that as well. Again, 2 proven items of bait that I use in my mixes 99.9% of my fishing. And I know with this mix that when I put it out there, it's going to be sitting nice and presented over the weed. And moving on as well, much like I've done here, and I'm sure all of you guys will come across this at some point, the lake is extremely weedy and it's been very hard to find a clear spot. So what I've done is I've found the clearest possible spot that I could. But I know by introducing this bait on a little and often basis that when the fish come over it, it will in fact help you to create a bit of a clear spot. And I'm almost certain that by the time I end up finishing this particular session, the spot that I'm fishing that was once quite weedy will be like a dinner plate by the time that I've ended fishing here. So there you go, that is the mix that I'm using and why I'm using that particular mix down here on Thorney Weir. Now, one other thing that you'll notice is that I'm preparing the bait in a bait tub, and when I'm measuring the bait out, I'm actually quite precise in how much I'm putting in each time. Now I am dropping this via a bait boat. It is very, very easy, certainly with Cecil the vessel, to get a little bit excited because the hopper will hold up to 5 kilos. And much like if I'm spomming bait out, and I see this on so many different occasions with so many anglers, they'll start off with 5 spoms, they'll catch a fish, put 10 spoms out, then they won't catch anything else for a little while. One of my biggest pieces of advice in carp fishing is to always remain consistent. So every single time, regardless if I'm rebaiting the rod or I'm redropping the rod, I will use exactly the same amount of bait every time. And what I've made in this bait tub is probably the equivalent of about 3 midi-X spoms, which is what I'd normally be using should I be putting it out via a spom. And one final thing, the reason why I'm making it up in a bait tub is because I like to prepare all my bait in one area. So by preparing it into a bait tub, I can make it in here, take it over to the bait boat, and it's far easier to tip from a bait tub into the hopper than what it is with a great big bucket. And all it means is there's no mess around the front of the swim, there's no bait lying around everywhere, and I can keep everything nice and neat, nice and compact, and remain consistent every single time. Well, I'm just resorting the rods out ready for this evening, but what a day it has been today. Not only have I caught a good few carp, but I've also had some really, really special looking fish as well. And I'm catching them using very, very simple tactics, applying a lot of bait purely and simply because of the time of year. Now, I have timed this session absolutely perfectly. The fish spawned probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. I never like to go straight after they've spawned, give them a little bit of a rest, but a couple of weeks after they spawned, you know they are properly on the munch. Granted, you're not going to be catching them at their optimum weight, but there is so many fish and so many nice fish in Thorney Weir. It's a place that I don't get to come that often, so to come here and have a really good session and just see how many and how nice these fish are in this lake, it has been absolutely amazing. So yeah, so far, so good. Let's hope it continues. Put the brew kit there. You made the brew. I know what I'll do, I'll put it right where the wall, because middle of the night. Unbelievable.
Tap that GoPro.
You'll get out there. Well, I don't know if you heard that on the bike cam, but I got so excited when I had the bite that I absolutely clattered the brew kit on the way out. And I'm now stood here with a throbbing left big toe, but I'm into another fish. I never redone the rods right on dark, just because this was the same time as I caught fish last night. And yeah, the right hand rod went. I took the whole brew kit with me, and yeah, we got another fish on. So whilst nursing a poorly toe, I'm going to try and get another fish in. It's coming in a pretty straight line, this one, which is always a result. I don't think he's a bad fish, to be honest. No, he's not a bad fish. He wants to kick off now. It's in all the lights. There he is. In we go. Nice long mirror. Lovely. A great start to the night. My toe hurts though. Barb, let's pop straight out. That's a nice one. Nice 20-pounder. How's about that then? Another Thorney Weir mirror carp. Little bit of a disaster getting from the bed to the rods. Nearly broke my toe in the process, stubbing it on my windshield, but nonetheless managed to battle through the pain and got this one in. So I'm going to get the rod back out. I'm going to lay back down in bed and chill out. A few fish have started crashing out in front of me, so you never know. Probably not going to be that long before one of them goes off again. But there you go, another Thorney Weir carp. Lovely. Over a little bit quick, but there we go. Good start to the day. Well, after a quiet night, that one that I had just after dark was in fact the last bite that I had up until about an hour after first light this morning, which isn't a bad thing to be honest, because there's nothing worse than having a broken sleep, and I do like my sleep, so yeah, that was pretty good. But just had another one now, another again, mid-20, lovely looking mirror. Just put the rods back out, made myself a coffee. I'm going to down this, we'll grab that fish out, have a little look. It's the final day today. The weather is still yet to do anything like what it said it was going to do. It was meant to be 20+ degrees, bright sunshine and blue skies, and we've probably only seen the sun for a couple of hours throughout the whole trip. So you never know, things might change today, the sun might come out. So yeah, I'm going to down this, we'll grab that fish out and have a look at it. Oh, a bit bigger than I thought. Well, here he is, this morning's wake-up call. Another stunning Thorney Weir carp, a little over 20 pound. You know, the average size of fish that I've had so far has been very, very good. Considering they've had a real heavy spawn, the average size of fish that I've had has been well over 20 pound. This is definitely a place that I'm going to come back to in the autumn, in the winter, because if the average size of fish is over 20 pound after they spawned, at their prime weights, there's going to be so many big fish in here. And with the fishing as good as what it is, you could really rack up a hit of big fish and also stunning fish. I'm going to slip this one back now. Rods are back out there. Let's see what the rest of the day has to offer. Gosh. This particular session has been, without a doubt, my best ever trip that I've had to Thorney Weir. Granted, I've not fished here a lot, but this has been a very, very successful trip. Now, I've learned quite a lot from this trip. First things first, the style of angling that I like to do, find the middle part of the lake, put some bait out, put your rods over it, and sit there and wait. That wasn't going to work. I may have potentially had a couple of fish doing that, but looking back, when I moved, it would have been a silly move of me to have stayed where I was, because I wasn't really reading necessarily what the fish were doing straight away. It took a couple of hours to process the fact that the fish were spending a lot of time in the weed during the day and they were pushing out into the open water during the hours of darkness. And when you weigh it up logically, you've got more hours of daylight where the fish are going to be sitting in the weed than what you've got hours of darkness. So the move to the other side of the lake, I think, has been the biggest key. Again, fishing over weed. Now, obviously I fished over a lot of weed in my time. Just because you can't find a really clear spot, that there are ways and methods that you can present over the top of the weed. And you know, these fish live out in that environment, and the lake is 99% covered in weed. They have to feed over it, but the way in which I've applied the bait in small amounts, but also making it very light so it sits on top of the weed, and also switching up from fishing a normal illusion D-rig to fishing a real slow sinking Ronnie, has definitely brought extra bites. I'm almost certain of that, because it's meant that I've been able to present for the whole time that I've been here. And that aside as well, the fish are out of this world. You know, we've come now a couple of weeks after they've spawned and they still look absolutely stunning, and they're still big as well. You know, I've had a 30 pounder. This is for sure a lake that I'm going to come back to and spend a lot more time, because when these fish are at their prime weight, there must be so many lovely fish in here.